Harold Bennett had lived by Meridian Lake for 37 quiet years, but nothing in all those decades prepared him for what he saw that evening. He had just stepped onto his porch, the boards creaking under his weight, when Eric's car came roaring down the dirt road, faster, wilder, and more reckless than Harold had ever seen. Dust burst into the air behind the tires as Eric slammed on the brakes near the water's edge. For a moment, the world went still, as if even the lake itself was holding its breath. Harold watched from the porch, confused, then uneasy, as his son-in-law jumped out, yanked open the trunk, and dragged out a large, brown suitcase. The way Eric gripped the handle, the way his shoulders strained, told Harold it was heavy, much heavier than luggage for a simple day trip. Eric kept glancing around, eyes sharp, paranoid, scanning the trees and shoreline like someone running out of time. Then, with a sudden violent heave, he hurled the suitcase into the lake. A splash tore across the stillness. And then Harold heard it, a muffled, desperate sound from deep inside that sinking case. His chest tightened. His hands shook. And without thinking, Harold ran toward the shore, terrified of what he might find. Long before Harold's feet hit the dirt running toward that sinking suitcase, the day had begun quietly, so quietly, in fact, that the sudden chaos felt almost unreal. Earlier that morning, the house had been still, filled with the kind of silence that comes only after a great loss. 6 months had passed since his daughter Mia's accident, but Harold still woke every morning expecting to hear her humming in the kitchen, or calling him from the hallway with that bright, effortless kindness she carried into every room. Instead, he moved through empty spaces and unanswered memories, a 68-year-old widower trying to make peace with a life that had become far too big and far too quiet. Eric, his son-in-law, had grown distant since the funeral. No calls, no visits, not even a hollow attempt at staying connected. That distance gnawed at Harold. He remembered the way Mia had once confided her doubts, how she whispered that Eric was hiding things, drowning in financial trouble, making decisions that didn't feel right. And at her funeral, Eric had stood stiff, cold, almost calculating. Harold had felt a chill even then. So when he saw Eric's car tearing down the lakeside road that afternoon, something inside him tightened. Something was wrong, very, very wrong. By the time Harold reached the shoreline, the suitcase had already begun to sink, its leather darkened and swollen with lake water. His breath came in ragged bursts as he splashed into the shallows, the cold biting at his legs. He grabbed the strap and pulled with all the strength his aging arms could muster, grunting as the weight fought him, as if whatever was inside didn't want to be found. And then he heard it again, that faint, muffled cry, soft but unmistakably alive. Panic surged through him. With trembling fingers, slipping against the wet zipper, he forced it open inch by stubborn inch. When the lid finally gave way, Harold froze. Inside, curled in a soaked blue blanket, was a newborn baby boy, skin pale, lips tinged purple, so still he looked almost carved from wax. For a heartbeat, Harold thought the child wasn't breathing. Then he saw it, the tiniest flutter of a chest, a whisper of life. He scooped the infant into his arms, his body instinctively bending to shield the fragile form. That blanket, he knew it. Mia's blanket. Her favorite. His heart lurched with confusion and terror. Could it be? Shaking, he rushed back toward the house, fumbling for the phone, dialing 911 as he tried to warm the tiny body against his chest. Please hurry, he begged. Sirens arrived minutes later, though to Harold it felt like hours, and paramedics rushed the child into the ambulance with urgent, practiced hands. At the hospital, Harold sat in a hard plastic chair, his clothes still damp, his hands still trembling from adrenaline. Doctors whisked the newborn away for emergency treatment, leaving him staring at the double doors as if sheer will could keep the child alive. Moments later, the police arrived, led by Detective Rosa Alvarez, a woman with calm eyes and a voice sharper than the pen poised above her notebook. She listened as Harold recounted every detail, but Harold could see something shifting behind her steady expression, as if she sensed this was only the first layer of something far darker. When the doctors returned, their words deepened the mystery. The baby was only 3 days old, showing clear signs of a home birth. No hospital records. No missing infant reports. No mother searching or calling authorities. And that blue blanket, the one Harold knew belonged to Mia, only tightened the knot in his chest. How could Mia's things be wrapped around a stranger's child? Or was he even a stranger? Detective Alvarez didn't dismiss the possibility. She didn't dismiss Harold either. Instead, she placed him in the uncomfortable position of being both witness and potential suspect until more answers surfaced. Meanwhile, officers tracked down Eric. His bank showed a sudden $40,000 withdrawal. His employer reported he'd left work early with no explanation. Old financial debts resurfaced. Lies he'd told about Mia's accident came to light. Every new detail pushed suspicion further toward him. Finally, Detective Alvarez ordered DNA tests for both the baby and Harold, because the truth now lay in blood. 2 days later, Detective Alvarez returned to the hospital with a folder pressed tightly under her arm, her expression carrying the weight of whatever truth she was about to deliver. Harold felt his throat tighten as she sat across from him, because he already sensed nothing good ever arrived in manila envelopes. She took a careful breath before speaking, as if easing him into a storm. The DNA results were back, she said, and there was no room for doubt. The baby was biologically related to Harold. His grandson. Mia's child. For a moment, Harold forgot to breathe. His daughter, his sweet, bright Mia, had been pregnant, growing life inside her, carrying a secret she never shared. The shock hit him like a blow, but Detective Alvarez wasn't done. The second result confirmed something even darker. The baby matched Eric's DNA as well. It was his child. That meant Eric knew about the pregnancy. That meant Eric delivered the baby in secret. And that meant Eric had been the one to try to get rid of him. Harold's hands shook uncontrollably, his grief opening into something deeper, sharper, a devastation laced with rage. Alvarez watched him for a moment, then revealed the truth she had been holding back. Mia's accident wasn't an accident at all. The brakes on her car had been tampered with. Sabotaged. And all evidence pointed toward Eric. Harold's world collapsed a second time. Before he could gather his breath, Alvarez added one final blow. Officers went to pick up Eric for questioning. His house was empty. His phone abandoned. His car gone. Eric had vanished. The message arrived just after sunset, a single line glowing on Harold's phone. Meet me at the lake tonight. Come alone. Bring no police. If you want the truth about Mia, come. Harold felt the old fear stirring again, but behind it pulsed something fiercer, a need for answers, for closure, for justice his daughter never received. He agreed, though the moment Detective Alvarez saw the message, she moved quickly, assembling a covert team that would shadow him without being seen. Harold wouldn't walk into danger alone, no matter what Eric demanded. Close to midnight, Harold stepped into the abandoned boathouse, its rotting boards groaning beneath his feet. Moonlight spilled through broken windows, casting jagged shadows across the floor. The air was damp, cold, heavy with the smell of lake water and old memories. Then Eric emerged from the darkness, unshaven, shaking, eyes wild. He paced like a trapped animal, muttering that he never meant for things to get this far, insisting Mia misunderstood him, insisting he did nothing wrong. But his ramblings spiraled until the truth spilled out. He admitted Mia confronted him. He admitted sabotaging the brakes. He admitted delivering the baby alone. And he admitted tossing the newborn into the lake to escape a life he didn't want. Then he pulled a gun, pointing it straight at Harold. But Harold didn't flinch. With steady hands, he pressed the hidden panic button. The doors blasted open. Officers flooded in. Eric panicked, fired once and missed, then hit the ground as the police tackled him, his screams swallowed by the chaos he had created. Eric's arrest marked the beginning of a new chapter, not one free of pain, but one finally moving toward justice. Within days, charges were filed: first-degree murder of Mia Bennett, attempted murder of his own newborn son, and attempted murder of Harold. The courtroom murmured when the charges were read, but Harold barely heard them. His focus was on the tiny infant still fighting for life in the NICU. Each day, he stood beside the clear plastic crib, his hand resting gently over the child's, whispering promises he wished he could have made to Mia. The baby grew stronger, inch by inch, his heartbeat steadier, his breaths deeper, until nurses began smiling when Harold entered, as if sharing in the quiet victory of a life that had refused to fade. When the custody hearings began, Harold sat before the judge with equal parts fear and determination. Social workers visited his home, reviewed his history, spoke with neighbors. They saw the quiet devotion in his eyes, the steady way he talked about protecting his grandson. First came temporary custody. Then, months later, permanent. And on a late summer evening, Harold sat on his porch with the child, now named Elias, resting peacefully against his chest. They looked out across the lake where everything had begun, the water calm, almost forgiving. Harold bent his head and whispered, "You're safe now, little one. Your mom would be proud. And I'll make sure you grow up knowing how loved you are."